guys, today I'm going to be putting on some makeup that I've been kind of dabbling with in the last few weeks when I want a little bit of something, because I'm still not wearing makeup every day. I'm still not even wearing makeup every week. But these are some of the things that I've been really enjoying. And we're going to do a little bit of a moving house Q&A. I asked for some questions a couple of days ago on Instagram, and I had so many questions and I felt like they quite nicely kind of slotted into categories. There's some random ones as well, which we'll do separately, but I've got a few kind of categories of Q&As which I think would be quite interesting. So I'm going to start off with, these were gifted. I've got some Bobbi Brown correctors. I'm not sure what colour I want to use. Porcelain Peach is kind of more of a kind of neutral slash yellow, which I know is not perfect for under eyes or for kind of dark circles, but I just prefer it. I prefer something a little bit neutral, and I've not been sleeping all that well recently, so I am getting a little bit of darkness, although it's not something I massively struggle with. Also, this is quite heavy as it goes, but I don't find that it's unflattering under the eyes at all. It's like a creamy consistency, but I find it to be very, very forgiving. Right, okay, so the first question, this is like current house related, because for those of you that don't know, I live in a house with my parents. So how much interaction do you have with your parents on a normal day living together? And this same person asked whether or not we kind of visit each other. Now that kind of suggests that we have wings of the house, which is not the kind of house that we live in. We live in kind of a standard 4-bedroom house. The rooms are a good size, but you know, we don't live, they haven't got a separate massive living area or anything. We've kind of split a regular house into areas for us all to share separately. So we live separately, but we live together. We share the kitchen and obviously the garden, like utility area, that kind of thing, all the shared areas that you would imagine. Some dogs walking past. But we've got our own living areas. So we've got this living room that you see, and what would be the dining area, which was connected to the kitchen, but we put in kind of some doors to wall it off to give them some privacy. That's where my mum and dad live, so they live kind of in the dining section of the house, and they've got doors that kind of open out onto the garden to make it all feel a little bit more roomy. So we don't visit each other as such, we don't sit with each other in each other's areas, but we see each other constantly throughout the day, in and out of the kitchen, walking in and out, like to go to the garden and things, we'll have a talk. But it's hard to say in terms of interaction, because I think different people expect different things. Like when people live together, sometimes they all live together. We do live together, but we live separately. So it's constant interaction every day, but it's not, we're not sitting down and kind of eating together, and we don't sit down and watch TV together. We are like separate, if you know what I mean. And they've got the master bedroom and the ensuite, and we've got the rest of the bedrooms for obviously us and the kids and the family bathroom. Now, what was always the plan was when we had done 5 years, which would be next year, we were all going to move. So we were going to do this for 5 years, which would help everybody financially. And it was just kind of like in the back of our mind, we were always used to talk about it. One day we'll do this. And we did. It's had its challenges for sure, but we're coming to the end of the 5 years. Nobody's killed each other. So I think we're considering it a win. And next year we will be moving, so the rest of the questions are relevant to that. Also, this is Milk Makeup Work, which is W-E-R-K, lip and cheek, and I really like this. It's like I mean, it's not too much, it's kind of like a rosy colour anyway. I find with cream products often they go on and they're immediately like, wow, okay, way too much, difficult to blend out, and just a lot, whereas this I find nice to work with, but also it's not too crazy a colour immediately. So what type of house do you think you want next? Obviously, we've all been looking at like the house that we want to move to next when we all move on. And Lee and my dad each separately look constantly at the houses. I think it's like, it's hard to settle into a house when you know you're not going to stay there. And I have found that really difficult, knowing that this was a temporary house. We've rented previously. Lee and I both owned houses a long time ago with previous partners, and then we rented together, and eventually we were going to buy, but then we did this in the meantime. So basically by the time we do leave, we'll buy again, and my mum and dad will buy again. But I found it really difficult to stay in this situation and be excited about moving and be excited about the next house while also feeling like this house is my home. And so I haven't really kind of been looking ahead at all. Lee will show me houses and I'm like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to look. Number one, I don't want to get attached to a house that's not going to be available as and when we move, because he's been looking throughout and so has my dad. That's my main thing. But also I don't want to constantly be feeling like this is only a stopgap. For a few reasons. I like to feel like this is my home. When we rented it, I felt the same way. I like this is the home that I have right now. This is my home. But also, I think when you're kind of looking so far ahead, you're missing out on life a little bit. For me, that's how I feel. And I didn't want to kind of count down or wish away a huge chunk of the kids' childhoods thinking, well, you know, in 4 years, this is what we're going to do and blah, 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 blah. It's one thing for it to be like a holiday next year or a little bit of something to look forward to in a few months, but I don't want to think 5 years down the line, this is like my end goal. I don't really like long-term stuff like that. I like smaller things. That's just kind of how my mind works. So it's only really recently that I have allowed myself to really consider what I would like it to look like. I know realistically the kind of houses that we're looking at, what's available in the area, where we want to go. But I think I have an idea of what I want. I think I'm pretty realistic. I'm happy for it to be like a semi-detached house and it to be larger space, whereas Lee would probably rather it be detached. We'll see where we fall on that. I would probably rather have like a house that needed doing up a little bit, something that you needed to renovate, whereas again he probably would rather have something that we move into and is already ready. I think we're going to have some major compromises down the line when it comes to it, because in my mind I want space to grow into, because again I'm always thinking the long term. I want it to be my home. I want it to be my home for a long time. I want space to grow into, so I don't want it to be a house that just fits us right now. I don't want it to be a massive house. I want it to be a reasonable, I want it to be affordable. I want us to be able to pay off the mortgage earlier, and I still want money to be able to do the things that we want to do. So I don't want to overextend ourselves. If anything, us all moving in together like this, I think now we're all going to move out and buy substantially smaller houses than we would have been looking at, because no matter what, we're all going to feel like that space is so much larger because we're the only ones in it. So we kind of have an idea of what the house will look like. I mean, it's difficult to know what you have in mind when you ask the question. But you know, a standard, probably 3, possibly 4-bedroomed house. I'm more interested in the downstairs space. If we were to have an extra room upstairs, then potentially we would have that as like a wardrobe or something. If you had an extra room downstairs, it might be a games room / office. In an ideal world, I would have a separate room where I can have my things and my filming stuff set up. It's always been the dream in a home that we would own one day. But I'm realistic and I would rather have all the other things on my list than that. That's like a total bonus. And then there is also a house wish list. So what's on your house wish list for when you move? I'm not sure if that's like furnishings and what I want it to look like again, or if it's like these are the things that I want from a house. But again, I like to think that every situation that you're in kind of teaches you something and it makes the next step better. It makes it so that maybe your expectations are a little bit more manageable. Even this whole thing of being in lockdown is kind of made us all take a little bit of stock, I think, and realize what we're really grateful for, what's really important versus what maybe we thought was important before. And I think that's basically what happened to us in all living together for the past 4 years. So my wish list is considerably smaller than it used to be. But I'm thinking also of doing a video on some of like my mood boards for the next house, because the thing that I did find I was able to kind of latch onto while Lee was looking at these houses was I could kind of get excited about decor and what I actually like visually, kind of what I wanted to do with a house, because that can be any house. You can take an idea, some inspiration, and take that to any house you want. You don't have to be too attached to a specific structure. So that's stuff that I've been excited about already. That's stuff that I've kind of been building. So let me know if you'd be interested. Maybe I'll do kind of like, this is my dream home mood board or something, because that's something I could talk all day about. But yeah, and when it does come to looking at actual specific houses, I'm not even really interested in what the house looks like. I'm interested in the layout, like the actual floor plan. This is how this works. Worth noting as well, one thing on my wish list, which is something that you wouldn't even consider, is I want to drive and I want to be able to drive up to my house, because right now we've got one parking space between 4 cars and it's not directly outside the house. You've got to go down a snicket, get to it. It's like a detached garage. And Lee parks there, Dad parks by him, me and Mum park even further away outside the front of the house, like down a path. It's a whole thing, and I did not appreciate how much I would miss an actual garage. Well, not a garage, but a drive, and being able to park outside my house when you've got heavy stuff, and it's crazy. But yeah, little things, but I have got a wish list, and I've got a visual representation of what I want my house to look like, if you'd be interested in that video. Right, mascara. I've got the Primark PS Dramatic Lash Volume and Length Lash Care Complex. I feel like that was like mega tangents. It's hard to know when asking for questions and then coming to answer them, because the person who's asked the question is not in front of me. What did you mean by this? Like, one person said, what type of house do you think you want next? Which in itself is open to interpretation. I think, I don't know, but I think what we'll probably end up with is a semi-detached 4-bedroom or a detached 3-bedroom regular house. Nothing special. I don't think we're going to move to anything that's going to seem like, wow, wasn't expecting that. Just a standard house. But maybe you're asking something a little bit more nuanced than that, and I'm not getting it. And then the other person said, what would you want your next home to look like? And I mean, in a nutshell, it's anything from a Nancy Meyers movie. If you've seen, it's complicated, something's got to give, and it's a thing. I googled it thinking it was just me. I want to live in a Nancy. No, this is a thing. It's, people have written articles about it. Like, what is it about her sets that really appeals to people? And it's like a warmth and a home feeling, and that's what I want. And I think that across all of the time that I've ever been looking at home decor, like since I first moved out when I was 18, 19, I think the one thing that has been constant is that feeling. I bought my first house, we walked into it and it was cold. I remember walking into the house and it was a tiny, tiny house. There was nothing exciting about it at all. Just no curb appeal, no nothing. And I walked into the kitchen, the back of the house, and it was warm. It was just, there was something about it. Walked into this miniature kitchen that wasn't even the front door, because the front door went directly into the living room, which we never used. It was a really bizarre setup house. It was tiny, tiny. And on paper, you wouldn't have been excited about it, but there was a feeling. There was just a feeling when I walked in, and I think that's what I'm trying to, that's the feeling that I want. I want that to be the feeling. I think maybe that reminds me of when I was a kid, coming home, there were always people in the house, and it was always warm and the light was always on, and it's just, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, I don't know. This is turning into therapy. But yeah, they were the few questions that I got about the house, and I've got some money saving questions as well. This, by the way, is Becca Chrissy Teigen Glow Gloss. The colour, I don't know, it might be called Glow Gloss. I don't think it is though. It was from like a beach collection a few years ago, and I've worn it a couple of times recently, and every time one of you has said, what have you got on your lips? And I mean, it's not the cheapest lip gloss in the world, but I love it. It's actually very similar, not quite as glossy, but very similar to the Fenty Gloss Bomb. I just can't find any of my makeup recently. I think I've put it in bags, and then pre-lockdown, what happened to it, I don't know. Right, so I've got a couple more questions before we finish, and it was specifically about saving money. So the first one was, what is your best tip for saving money? Right, my number one, because I used to say this, I used to give this in a more physical saving money way, and I realised it doesn't work for everyone, but when I had very, very little money, I did not have a lot of disposable income, and yet I was finding that I just had no money or minus money at the end of the month, and I knew I should have, like looking at my budget, I knew I should have money left over. What I used to do was, when I would go and get cash out for something, which I know this is not super relevant anymore because very few people do this, but at that time I had like childminder that I would need to get cash out for, just things that I would need that for. I would go to the cash machine, and whenever I got money out, I would get an extra 10 or 20 pounds, and then when I got home, I put that money in a box. This is not necessarily a recommendation, it's not the safest way to save money, and it's maybe not a 2020 suggestion, this was 10 years ago, but that is how I saved money. And I saved money relatively quickly because it wasn't in my account, I couldn't see it, it was out of sight, and eventually, even like a month, 2 months later, I had a wad of cash that would have just gone. If that cash had been in my purse, it would have gone. If it had been in my bank account, it would have gone. So that used to be what I would say. If you need to save money, you can do that. However, my new updated version of that I have been doing is whenever I think about buying something, whenever I'm considering purchasing, I don't know, let's say I'm looking at a dress and I'm like, oh, I don't really need the dress. Why am I buying this dress? The money that it would have been for that dress, I put in a different account. So it's as if I've bought the dress. It's as if the money's gone out of my account. And in a couple of days' time, if I still really want the dress, the money is there. I can buy the dress. But chances are in a couple of days I don't. And that money is now in a savings account or in a separate account, in a whatever. It works the same way. You're taking it out of your current kind of money situation, out of sight, moving it away somewhere. Give it to someone if you have to. Transfer it to like your partner, your parent, your friend, whatever. You know, trust. But that is how I do it. I'm not a good saver. I can't save for nothing. And so I need a trigger. I need a reason to be saving. And if it is, you were going to spend the money on this, instead of just not spending the money, take the money out and put it somewhere. And instead of spending that money, you're actually physically saving it somewhere. Because it's one thing for me to save money by just not having spent it. And it's another thing for me to actually save it, as in keep it to one side and it not be in my bank account. So I go, no, I'll just pop to Costa, I just pop to McDonald's, I'll get pizza. Because those are the things that I spend my money on. The last question is, what is the category you find it hardest not to spend money on? And I've talked about this a little bit, but you might be surprised. I'm not, like, I can go shopping and happily not spend anything at all, and go around Primark and go around Boots, go around anywhere and not spend any money. It's not like day to day I must spend money, or day to day I have to buy this thing. I don't have that drive anymore, unless, which again we talked about, when I'm feeling super stressed out, my instinct is I'm gonna buy myself to make myself feel better. I'm gonna buy myself something to make myself feel better, which is something that I've had to really fight against. Day to day, I don't have that feeling anymore, and I'm hoping that eventually I'll be able to break myself of the instinct to kind of comfort spend as well. But where I spend my money is supermarkets, which is why I've saved a ton during lockdown, because I haven't been going to the supermarket until very recently, and it's come back in a big way. Like, if I go to the supermarket, I'll buy hardly any food, and I've spent £60 and I'm like, how did this happen? I went to Asda last week and I bought a night dress that was £12. I mean, it's really nice and I really like it, and yes, I needed a new night dress, but it was £12 I wouldn't have spent. I wouldn't have gone out of my way to look for that online. It was an impulse purchase that I would not have spent money on if I hadn't been there in the store. The other thing is Amazon. I would think the number one thing I struggle with is Amazon. It's the, oh, I need this, I'll buy this. And it's not, it doesn't feel like frivolous things, and so it doesn't feel like it's racking up, or I'm just not seeing it as the same kind of spending. Like, if I go into Boots and I spend £30, that's £30 that I spent. I know how, like, I made a list of the stuff that I've spent this month, and I went into Boots and I spent 20 something pounds. And in my mind, that was the thing. I spent money in Boots. I have no idea how much money I've spent on Amazon. I'm gonna wait until the end of the month and I'm gonna go on my online banking and it will tot it up for me. This is how much you spent on Amazon. And I know I'm gonna be horrified, because it doesn't have to be anything major. We need sun cream, Amazon it. We need even toilet paper now, we always Amazon it, because it's just like, why were we even ever doing it? Like, it's just so much easier to have it delivered to the house when you can't drive up to your front door. Anything, could be anything, and I'll Amazon it. Especially since we've been in lockdown in the past month, because initially I was really good, and then I was like, I'm not able to go to the shop, I don't want to go to the supermarket, Amazon it. This is where I spend my money, and this is the thing that I'm struggling with most. And I think what I'm going to do in August, because I'm going to be on a mega super duper July no buy, because I'm going to be hopefully buying something expensive that I've been saving for. In order to justify that, and in order to actually have the money at the end of the month to buy the thing that I've been saving for, I need to make sure I've been on a fairly strict no buy. And I think what I'm going to do is remove my cards from Amazon, because that's like, it doesn't matter where I am. I was on a lilo in the pool. We've got, it's not a real pool, an above ground like put up pool that my mum bought for the garden during lockdown, which is really cool, but an absolute bitch to keep clean. We can't have the filth, it's a whole thing. Anyway, so I was on a lilo in the middle of this pool, and I thought, you know, we could do with another one of those lilos. And I ordered it on my phone, nowhere near my bank cards, and I shouldn't be able to do that. I think I need to turn that off. I think that's gonna help. But I find saving money difficult, but if I actually take little bits of money and put them aside, that's good. I've turned on the save the change thing that Halifax has, where if you buy something and it's like, I don't know, $9.99, it saves the penny, but it's anything, it like rounds up to the next pound. So it could be like 50p, sometimes it's a few pounds a day that it's like just squirreling little bits of money away, which I think is a really, really great initiative. There are loads of banks that are doing it like that now, but that's gonna take a long time to become anything of consequence. I also use Top Cashback. I have a link, I will leave it below. It is an affiliate link in that if you share your link, you'll get the same that I do. I think you get something like £5 of cashback or something if somebody signs up with it and uses the cashback website. This month I got £120. Now I don't get it monthly, I'll get it every few months. People will it all comes in and then they give you an amount. But that was free money. That was money that I got back from spending online when I remembered to use Top Cashback. So these are just little things that I find for someone who doesn't easily, it's like a not natural saver, it kind of comes a little bit easier. So that is it. I can only imagine, I've said this a million times before, but once I start talking, it's the extrovert thing. Once I start talking and I get in a groove, I'm energized by talking. I'm energized by this social interaction, and even though it's a one-way social interaction, it's the same thing for me as if you were here with me. And if I was to film 4 videos, the 4th video, I'd be practically manic because I just get really, really, really super energized. And now, watching, if you've watched all the way to the end, if you skip back to the beginning of this video, I'll be like, so anyway, I was doing this thing. Because I've barely spoken to anyone all day. And so often, I'll think, I need to go back and refilm. Because, well, and then there's this and there's this. And then steadily, I like to call it high on my own supply. So yeah, that's a weird thing about me as well. But I hope that this was interesting. I hope that kind of answered some of the questions that maybe you had about my current living situation, because I know lots of people ask about that, and it's kind of difficult to explain, and it's difficult to kind of get into, as I've always said, because it involves more than me. I am very open, I'm very candid, I'll tell you everything about myself, whether you're interested or not. But once you kind of involving other people, then I can only speak for myself. I can say, you know, this is really easy, this is really difficult, but other people might be like feel completely differently about the situation. I think living with my parents for the past 4 years has been a blessing and a curse, and I think they would agree. And I think we all probably were prepared for that. It's very similar to having roommates with a strange dynamic, because as parents, you're going to be more tolerant of the children because you were always prepared to live with your children. And my mum and dad have always lived with one of us, because at the year we moved in, my brother moved out. So they've not really ever been by themselves, but obviously they weren't prepared to live with an entire family. And my husband, it's a very different thing. And then the dynamic of like the parent-child thing of, well, I'm right and you're wrong, soon kind of disperses because you're equal in a new situation. So it's a very unusual thing. And I think once it's all over and I've got a little bit of time to reflect on it, I think I'm going to be able to easier say, this is how it worked, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is what I would do if I had my time again. Because there were things that I thought weren't going to be difficult that were, and vice versa. But ultimately, especially during lockdown, I have found it to be like, I want to say it's a baptism of fire, but we'd already done this for 3 years. But I have found it both great because so many people haven't been able to see their families. They're like slightly extended outside of their immediate family. They haven't been able to see their families through lockdown because of obviously social distancing, and we've been all together the whole time. My camera just turned itself off, which probably tells me I should stop talking. But yeah, as I said, hopefully that was useful, entertaining, answered some questions, and I will see you guys next week for another Q&A.